I will never introduce myself as the editor of Vogue. If someone asks me what I do, I say I'm a journalist, and then my friends will go like,
In today's episode, we're in conversation with Rochelle Pinto, the head of editorial content at Vogue India.
20 people will judge the cover. 3 people might be interested to see what's inside the magazine. And those are the 3 people that I'm interested in having a deeper conversation with.
An endlessly inquisitive child who monetized on her currency of confidence.
Listen, I don't think everybody likes me. I am who I am, and I don't play games. I have zero time for politics. You think that you're joining something very glamorous and you're gonna, I don't know, float around in some designer cloud all the time. No.
She started reading at just age 3 and is today one of the most powerful voices in fashion.
The idea that fashion is frivolous has often been used as a tool to control and to demean, and often targeted at women. Tomorrow, if a meteor struck and all the lifestyle journalists and all the hedge fund managers disappeared, the world would go on.
Exploring the pivotal moments that shaped her path, her vision, and the legacy that she wants to create at Vogue India.
I want for people, when they engage with Vogue, to feel special.
I also want to know about your interview with Anna. How did you get this job? Hi, Rochelle. Welcome to #Preach.
Thank you.
I think it's an understatement to say that it is so exciting to have you here, to have somebody who can actually talk about fashion with the kind of lens that you wear. And whichever event I've been at and I talk about you, because I meet a lot of Voguettes, that's what we used to call the lovely girls there. And I'm like, this is the first time, no matter which room I'm in, people love Rochelle.
Okay.
Like there
That's
wasn't
news to me.
No, there wasn't even like a side eye or like, because you get that at fashion events. There was just, I love Rochelle. So,
Wow.
firstly, I want to know the secret to that, because all my life I've really worked hard at people, like, people to like me. But then I built a brand that not everybody loves, which I'm really proud of also. So I feel like I have a split personality. But I think you've managed to consistently across probably like your journalistic circles and even fashion now, there's a lot of admiration for you.
Listen, I don't think everybody likes me. Let me put it that way. And I don't think I've invited. I don't think I've sentiment. But what I've tried to be as a journalist is transparent and ethical. And I am who I am, and I don't play games. I have zero time for politics, and I stick to my word. So over a period of time, initially that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and I'm sure you've just met the right kind of people. There's a whole group out there.
No, I think it was a very controversial batch of people I met, and you passed the test. So
Okay, so I think it's just a question in a professional environment. If you stick to your guns and if you are an ethical person, over a period of time, people are like, yeah, okay, she's fine. And what I've tried to do in the last couple of years, because when I was younger, I was very much a brutal honesty type of person. Whatever mood I was in, I would thought like, the world has to deal with it. It's not my problem. But I think as they do with all the naughty kids, they make you the class monitor.
Yeah.
So from a very young age, they would just make me the group leader, the class monitor. And I think I picked up on how to work in groups with different people's sensibilities and kind of create an environment where people feel at least safe to be themselves. And maybe that's what people are responding to now. And I'm very clear, especially in this job, that I'm learning, right? I've not arrived here. This was in my interview process with, Condé Nast. Even right after Anna Wintour, I was like, I wake up every day.
I want to know about that one.
No, it was so lovely because I couldn't pretend to be anybody other than who I am. And that person is someone who has a deep respect for fashion, who really loves the business of it, who really understands the value in it and is willing to learn. And every day I come to work asking questions, excited with ideas. I tell my team, like, sometimes the best ideas come from the intern. So you have to start with humility. And you also have to know what everybody brings to the table, right? Like, I've tried over a period of time to make room for everybody's opinions and be generous with compliments and not feel like women are my competition. I don't believe that at all. I feel like my entire life, I have benefited very directly from the generosity of others.
Especially women?
Especially women. And even the ones who were being difficult, and there were a few who were very difficult, but I feel like over a period of time, I've built a sisterhood of women who I know that even if I'm not in the room, they'll say my name if they hear of an opportunity. And that's exactly how I got this job. That's exactly how I got the job before this, the
How
one
did you
before
get this
that.
job? Okay, there's so many questions, but let me start from the beginning. Okay,
Okay.
we're gonna get to how you got this job.
Sure.
I also want to know about your interview with Anna because
Happy to share.
my God, did she take off her glasses?
You know, I was told that it's a good sign if she takes off her glasses, and she did actually in my first meeting with her. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Anna also is a fan then. Okay, so let me start at the beginning. I read somewhere that you learned to read at age 3.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot to do with your environment, your parenting. And I think that kind of set the stage for where you are
Yeah.
today. So I'm very curious to know about that. Like, how did Rochelle, age 3, if I were to give you a writing prompt, Rochelle at age 3 learns to read.
Yeah.
What happens next?
See, my parents were working parents, and I used to kind of be by myself. My sister is 5 years younger than I am. And I was very curious, very annoying, asked lots of questions. I had this irritating habit when my parents would talk, and if there was a word I didn't understand, I'd be like, means, means. And
Would
then
they
started,
explain it?
They would, and by the 5th means, they would switch to speaking in Konkani because they'd be like, forget it, like, we're done. But I was a very curious child, and the greatest currency, I would say, my parents gave me was confidence.
Right.
I've never felt in any room that I don't belong. And I don't know why. And that can be like when I was a cub reporter, that was like sitting in a room, with people who spoke only in Hindi, and me coming from Goa speaking the worst Hindi on the planet and almost miming. And I'm talking to someone who's an accident victim. And the whole family is like, Aap English mein bolo, aap English mein bolo. And they're all trying to play this game with me. To being, with CEOs and founders of fantastic international companies, and just always feeling like if you have curiosity and if you have humility, everybody kind of accepts you. And that really comes also from being a reader, because you inhabit so many different worlds from a very young age that you feel comfortable anywhere.
Yeah, you've lived so many lives.
You've said,
you know
exactly,
so many characters.
exactly.
You know the gray, you know the shadow side,
Yeah.
you know the light side of so many personalities. So I think nothing comes as a surprise, but the curiosity kind of gets activated. What's the story behind this person? Like, why is he speaking
Exactly.
like that? Yeah.
And you have because you've lived so many worlds, and you have all these imaginary friends in your head, you can find some kind of common point to chat about no matter who you're talking to, right? And that for me was books, definitely parenting, because I saw my mom being a working woman. I think a very strong work ethic was drilled into me from day one. Like, it was just so normal and natural to work hard, appreciate, the fruits of your labor, but not boast too much about anything. Self-deprecation is kind of built into the Goan spirit. And anytime somebody tries to like boast, everyone else is there to remind them where they come from. So yeah, I think honestly growing up in Goa was it's funny because where I am right now is a completely different world. Like, my parents, honestly, they know what I do, and they tell all their friends, and they share all my successes on their WhatsApp groups, but nobody really knows what I do,
But they're proud. Yeah,
They're
I see that
super
with my
proud.
parents too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just
That's
very
lovely.
happy for me. But it doesn't affect them in a way that when I go home, I can be completely myself. And I say this everywhere. Like, when I go home, I sleep in the same bed that I slept in when I was 17 years old. So there is no pretense and there is no facade. And so I don't know how to be any other way.
That you were brought up in a home where you said you felt very content and very satisfied growing up there. Then how did you become ambitious, like, along the way? You were like, you weren't really looking for more than what you had.
No, that's a very good point. Contentment doesn't mean you don't want more. Contentment is being happy with everything that you've achieved, and not in a way that this is not enough, I want more constantly. Like, I'm content sitting here talking to you, having this wonderful exchange of ideas. Does that mean that I will never want to be on another podcast ever again? Or does that mean I will not want to meet you again and have this conversation? No. But right here in this moment, I'm fully present. I'm content with my life. I'm content with the choices that brought me here. That is the difference. Ambition,
ambition doesn't-
simmers.
yeah.
Yeah, and ambition and contentment are not mutually exclusive. Discontent and happiness are yeah, opposites, you know. So I'm very content. Like today, for example, let's say, you know, let's say I was hoping that today I would also be able to have this amazing shoot that was happening, and the shoot didn't happen. Is it going to destroy my brain space? Is it going to make me second guess myself? No. So I'm content in those ways. Has it killed my ambition in any way? No. It'll make me hungrier to make sure the next shoot is even better. So it's like that. Like I will learn so many lessons from this podcast and from the way we interacted and from the lessons that you've taught me and the life stories that you've shared. And that will fuel my ambition. But for today, I'm very content with how the day has panned out.
So when you say just be yourself, I can just be myself. And I also read somewhere, he said that often the advice we give young people is just be yourself. But oftentimes that is so crippling because I don't know who I am. So how do I just be myself?
Yeah.
So this journey of like, who am I? Like, was that something that you were just born with? There are certain people who are just born with clarity of like, I've seen that in my older sister. I never had that. I had to find myself. I made work my identity, you know. How was it for you? How do you know who you are? When did you know this is who I am?
You know, that's such a fantastic question, and I've never been asked that question. So I'm going to try and answer it succinctly, but I will probably fail. There were parts of myself that I knew from a very young age that this is who I am. If you had asked me when I was 3 what I want to be when I grow up, I would have said writer because I was obsessed with books.
Wow.
Briefly, I wanted to be a horse because I had read Black Beauty. And I thought if a horse could write, I can be I thought these were interchangeable. This is obviously the idiocy of being very young.
The beauty of it.
Beauty of thinking anything is
Yeah.
possible. But when I don't know if there is a formula to being yourself, but what I learned is that I should never run away from my past, my journey. I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. And by that, I mean, I know I'm an intelligent person and I will never pretend to be dumb. I will never make myself smaller to allow other people to have more space. But I can create space for everyone without necessarily making myself smaller. There was a very pivotal moment for me in my childhood. I wasn't a child, I was a teenager. As I said, my parents come from humble beginnings and they really built this life for themselves. And I remember I was possibly 14, 15, and my dad had bought a car, but it was not a new car. It was a second-hand car. And back in the day, we didn't have such fancy terms like pre-loved and all of those words, right? Second-hand.
Second-hand.
And it was not necessarily a badge of pride to talk about owning a second-hand car, especially because all my friends were far better off than I was. And I was home. We used to live on the 3rd floor. And I had 2 friends who were coming to meet me. And they were downstairs. They saw my dad. And they were like, "Arey, uncle, new car." And my dad was like, "Yes, new car." And I could hear this because I was on the 3rd floor. And my heart was beating so fast because I was like, oh my God, he's going to tell them it's a second-hand car. He's going to judge me. They're going to judge me. They're going to... But they were having the time of their lives because my dad was treating them with respect. He was showing off this car and they were like lifting the hood and checking out underneath it and looking in the thing. And he was like, "Do you want to go for a ride?" And they were so excited that an adult was treating them with respect.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was like, wow, you know, what was I scared of? I was scared of being found out. I was scared of like, oh, if I pretend to be this kind of person, this is going to undo this reputation.
Yeah.
But look at what people respond to. People respond to being treated with respect. People respond to being someone being fully present, giving them attention. That is a memory that has crystallized in my brain. So I've never felt the need to pretend to be anybody other than who I am. And who I am is continually changing.
Right.
So if we have this conversation 5 years from now, I might have a different perspective to some of the questions that you ask me. But I'm fully comfortable with embracing the failures, the things that I struggled to do and didn't manage to do, or the things that I thought were great at that time and now I cringe when I think about them. I won't hide from it. And I think that's what we mean when we say be yourself. It's like embrace your entire journey. Don't hide from parts of yourself that you don't enjoy, because you will always be looking over your shoulder wondering, did someone notice that? Did someone see me?
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think between my parents, who are both very comfortable with who they are, and them giving me the space to focus on accomplishments. Another weird thing, I don't know, this is so weird. Like my sister and I have never heard from our parents anything regarding our looks. Like growing up, I don't think my mother has ever said, "You're looking pretty, you're looking this." Never.
Wow.
And it just completely eliminated the burden of having that take up any part of your brain.
Yeah.
It was very important to be clean, to be neat.
That's good to know. Yeah.
And I think that my mom she would only give me one thing. She's like, once you leave the house, do not fidget with your clothes. Don't none of that and that and any, like, you do all of that inside the house, and then once you leave the house, just like walk out with confidence.
Right.
And that was all they cared about. They didn't care about how we looked. And so none of these insecurities ever kind of, at least the home was not a space where these insecurities were in any way underlined. And I know for a lot of women that's not true.
But you dealt with those outside in school, in your school,
you
college.
do, right? Like you face all of that. But
your foundation kind of helped you discard that.
I think I've always had a slightly exaggerated, perhaps unfounded sense of confidence. Some of it comes from foolishness, just not knowing that I can't do it, trying it, and then being like, yeah, okay, I couldn't do this. Let me do this instead.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is so important. And I look back at my childhood. We were three sisters. There were always comments on our look, and not from her judging me, but her saying that, oh, when you go outside in the world, this is how people are going to judge you. So I think that really does play on your mind. It did on mine for sure. Okay, so then you are three, and you have been encouraged to read. And I'm guessing you were reading fiction when you were younger, and then you kind of moved into...
I read everything. I read the backs of medicine bottles. I read newspapers. I would read. Reader's Digest was my favorite thing. My grandmother used to subscribe to Reader's Digest, and the sound of the postman pushing the thing through the letterbox. I used to, it was a thrill. Like, I'm talking about it now, I can feel that thrill again. And my grandmother only spent her money on books, so she used to buy the Reader's Digest, the collector's edition books. So I used to read everything, some stuff that was totally inappropriate for me, definitely. Like how to deliver a baby. I was like, I must know this. One day I might be called upon. And they used to have actual diagrams in these books, like how to do this, how to do that. So my mind is a trash palace. It's full of random trivia that maybe one day will be useful, but is largely not useful in any scenario. But yeah, it was like I used to read, and as a result, I used to also write. I was constantly scribbling, constantly daydreaming. Useful now, but back then may not have given anybody too much confidence about my future.
And then you went through school, and I'm guessing in college you studied journalism?
I did, yes.
So you were the path was pretty...
It was very clear.
So there was no kind of a doubt that, okay, being a writer doesn't really pay, or will I be able to build a career? Those were not your thoughts. You were just...
I think growing up with not a lot, I was very comfortable continuing to not have a lot. There was no appetite for wealth or I need to own expensive things because my childhood felt very full. We didn't have a lot, and I have the best memories.
Right.
So that was never a priority for me, which in retrospect, maybe I should have had some sense of like, okay, this is how you need to earn, or this is how you need to be better at business or savings or whatever. For me, it was very important to have a fulfilling life and to wake up every day excited to go to work and enjoy what I did, because I saw that with my parents, and I saw that with the people around me.
So then how did the ambition kind of, because you've done a lot in this career, like you've I think right out of COVID is when you started Tweak with Twinkle.
During COVID, actually.
During COVID.
Yeah,
It became a force, like very, very quickly,
Thank you.
right? So that's a story that I definitely want to know. Like,
Sure.
Twinkle reached out to you and you said, okay, let's do it. Or did you know her from before?
No, I
Or
didn't
it
know
was just
her.
basis your work? Or how did that happen?
It was actually through, again, like I said, you surround yourself by people who say your name even when you're not in the room. It was a very dear friend, Vikram Raizada, who is someone I've known since I was a cub reporter at Fashion Week, and who's always been very kind and sort of presented opportunities to me, or at least said my name, when it mattered. So he was consulting with them and he recommended me. I met her, went through certain rounds of the interview process. And thankfully, it clicked and it worked. And for about 6 months, it was just her and me. And then we slowly started to build a team. And we just looked for misfits. We looked for people who had, something, because that's true for her and me. We're, as you said, like slightly on the fringe, outsiders who are very good at pretending, or not pretending, but for brief moments. With her especially, like she's kind of this beautiful mix of being somebody who can have a rich inner world, but is also very performative and can be on a stage and give her best. But
Right.
she's very happy also being in her house, reading a book, having her coffee and playing with her dogs, right? I'm incurably extroverted, but I'm incurably extroverted to the point where my team was like, God, we all suffer from anxiety, and there's one Energizer bunny just like bouncing everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but a misfit in other ways. A misfit in the sense of like not caring about many of the things that other people care about and having sort of coming from a different space. So we built that team with people like us, and because Twinkle just gave me carte blanche in terms of let's do something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
We were able to build a team in a very genuine way. And one thing that I deeply admire about her, this is possibly the best lesson I've learned from her, is that if you do things with authenticity, and I know this word is bastardized now, everybody uses it, but you have to stay true to your morals. And she's the kind of person who will walk away from a very lucrative deal if she feels it's compromising her credibility. So that vision of what is good for you in the short run versus what is good for you in the long
Right.
run, she has that like X-ray vision, and I've learned that from her. So it's better to say no now rather than compromise on
Yeah.
your ideals and damage your brand in the future. And I think that's something, like I was saying earlier, like ethically, being led by ethics is something that's very important to me, because I need to be comfortable with the decisions I
Yeah.
make.
Sometimes
Sometimes
you need to
make
sleep at night. Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes you make the wrong decisions and then you regret them, but at least you regret them and then you say, I'll never do this again, and you
Yeah.
hopefully have the courage to apologize
Yeah.
for the mistakes you
Yeah.
make.
And I also think that what the generation now doesn't really know, what we know, I think that's that you get a second chance.
Yeah.
And you get a third chance to do it right. Like
Yeah.
that comes because oftentimes I feel like there's so much fear now. I meet so many young designers who want to start their brands, but they're so afraid of saying it wrong, doing it wrong, branding it wrong, naming it wrong, that I'm like, you'll get a second chance, right? Like you'll get to do it better.
Yeah.
The only thing you need to tell yourself is when I get the second chance, I'll do 100 times better than what I
Yeah.
did the first time.
Yeah.
So I
Completely.
think as long as you can do that, you get chances.
That's so well said.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So this actually brings me to a very important question, because I know that in today's world, you get so many lucrative opportunities to virtually, like literally sell your soul. Are there certain pieces or advertorials that you've said no to?
Yeah.
And I've had to face consequences? Or have you always worked with bosses or editors who kind of supported that, even very young in your career?
I think that when I was younger, I had obviously much less cachet, right? I didn't have as much clout. So I was sometimes asked to do things I didn't want to do, and they would always result in negative consequences. Because I think that the audience is very intelligent and they absolutely know when someone is being disingenuous, right? Thankfully, over a period of time, now especially, I have the responsibility to protect this brand. I'm keenly aware that I am not Vogue and Vogue is not me. I'm a temporary custodian, and I should leave it stronger than what I
Wow.
inherited. And I'm very clear about one thing: a good boss makes themselves dispensable.
Yeah.
if I'm building a team and if a year from now the team cannot function without me, that means I've failed as
I
a team
100%
leader.
agree, yeah.
So I think that realizing that you need to be genuine and you need to have a moral code and you stick to that moral code, and it's very hard to say no, and sometimes you have to walk away from a lot of money, and sometimes you upset a lot of people because, let's say, it's an important advertiser and they want something to be done, and you say, well, I don't think that's going to be possible, and you explain clearly. The other thing that I try to do is always offer solutions.
Yeah.
If not this, then maybe this. And of course, it's a diluted solution, or maybe sometimes it's an impossible solution. The person cannot accept it. But we try as much as possible never to say no, but to sort of find a way to work together. And maybe that person will leave the room feeling like, okay, not this time, but maybe the next time.
Yeah.
But I do believe very strongly that if you go against your gut and you go against what is genuine, you may get away with it once, you may get away with it twice, but after a point you get caught out, and that the fallout of that
Yeah.
is so much worse, and it does so much more damage to the brand that I never want that. Like, I want 20 years from now, I want people to remember this period of time at Vogue as a positive, uplifting, inclusive period where Vogue really felt relevant to their lives.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge responsibility
It
to kind of
is.
shoulder now.
It is.
And I have seen you in quite a few environments now. I've seen you at Tweak, where there was a shoot going on, and there are like, so 100 people on the set, but you were sitting there, on your laptop. I don't know what you were doing, but looking like very clean as your mom would approve.
I'm glad.
And you were going at it, and there was just no distraction on your face, and I've seen you at Vogue Forces of Fashion, where there was, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of the biggest names in the industry. And you just held your own.
Thank
And
you.
you found time to like take pictures with me and with everybody there with so much grace. So for me, and I feel like for a lot of creatives, there is method to madness, right? And I think in your case, it's just method. I don't think.
No, trust me.
I don't think.
My team would beg to differ.
So I want to know about your method. Like when you have a project at hand. Okay, let's just first talk about a writing project when
Okay.
you were younger, when you were a writer. And then let's talk about you at Vogue, where like multiple,
Yeah.
I don't know, like you're hosting an event, you're going to Fashion Week, you're sitting here for a podcast. It just totally changes, right? So that method could have a little bit of madness, but I want to know about your writing method.
My writing method.
Because you've written, co-authored 2 books.
I've co-authored a book and I've edited and written in children's books. My writing method, oh gosh, it's very difficult to describe. It starts from a place of a lot of self-doubt for like a brief minute. It's like, oh my gosh, do you even know the language? Like, what's happening, right? It has a lot to do with, we used to call this the problem of the masterpiece, which is that first sentence you want to just dazzle everyone. And if you can't write a sentence that dazzles everyone, then you decide, let me not write. Let me spend as much time procrastinating as possible. And I am very guilty of being a procrastinator when it comes to writing. And so then I developed, but I used to work in a newspaper. So there was every day a 4:00 deadline that would loom over your head. And every time my team members would be like, oh my God, Rochelle's copy is going to be on my page. That means I'm only going to get the copy by 3:30.
Yeah.
And,
Okay. You were one of those.
Yeah. I'm full deadline junkie, gave people a lot of high blood pressure, I'm sure. So I would say that I've learned a lot because when you're young, you also don't realize you don't see the bigger picture, you don't realize the multiple consequences to it. And my process has evolved a lot since then. Writing is so different from my other job, and I feel like I get to do so little of it now.
I know.
It just so much of it is just admin.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
they don't
just-
tell you.
I
Like,
know it. I've been telling people, you want to be a team head? They come to me, want to be a team head? I'm like, you'll not get to write, you'll not get to design, you'll not get
Yeah.
to do that. You're just going to be managing people, but people don't get
They
it.
don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, do you still get to write?
I do. I think I've so far managed to write at least one piece in every issue. The first issue, I think I only wrote my editor's letter, but I labored
That was
over
a really
that.
good one.
Thank you.
That was a really good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I labored over that because I felt like, oh my gosh, I have
It's
to
the
get
first
it right.
one.
I have to get it right.
Masterpiece. It had to be.
Problem of the masterpiece. I managed to slip in Dolo 650 in that, and my friends were like, "Who writes about Dolo in Vogue?" And I was like, "I do. Now you know. Now you know
Yeah.
it's still me. You know."
Yeah.
You know, somebody gave me such fantastic advice because when I was at Tweak and I needed to start writing more, I would just get paralyzed because I was like, I need to be the best writer.
Yeah.
And but I know this person. I read this person's work every day because I edit it. So she's better than me, and this person's better than me. And I would just be like, no, I don't want to write. Forget it. And I spoke to a friend of mine, and he said, "Who said you need to be the best writer? Have they hired you as head writer?" I said, "No." He said, "What is your job description?" I said, "Editor." He's like, "You have to be the best editor. You don't have to be the best writer. You can be a decent writer." And he's like, "You know you're a decent enough writer. Just write. Like, get that ego out of the way." And that was so freeing temporarily.
Yeah,
My ego came
temporarily.
right back, like 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
But now when I write, I remind myself that I don't have to be the best at everything. I have to be the best editor. And that doesn't even mean actually like editing copy, though I'm very good at that. I have to be the best team lead for my team and understand what they need in that moment. And the
Yeah.
writing, you know, it's a journey. All writers hate what they write, which I'm sure is true for designers at some level. Like if you look
I
at,
hate-
yeah, after a point you're like, oh my god, how could I have made that
I
design
hate
choice?
it. You know, after I'm done with the collection, Aashna has to write a collection note, and she's like, "Okay, so how did you?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I don't want to talk about it. It's done, you know." And then I have to go back and I have
Yeah.
to really romanticize the whole feeling of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I'm so
Over
over it.
it. I totally get it. By the way, this is what apparently Karl Lagerfeld told Bandana when she interviewed him the first time. And he was like, I'm done with this. Why are we talking about the past?
Yeah, but they want you
Yeah.
to.
So yeah, but it just shows at some level that creative people we have so many dualities.
Yeah.
We're just full of these crippling paradoxes, and people on the outside must think, oh, life is so glamorous. Like, no, we spend most time like hiding under our blankets, being like, do I even know what I'm doing?
Yeah, so do you ever deal with imposter syndrome, especially now?
I think I used to. And then I realized that nobody bloody knows what they're doing. Everyone is faffing. You know? And I was like, I thought I was the only one. No. And if you ask questions rather than pontificate and pretend to know everything, not only do you actually become smarter, you realize who is actually not very smart. So both these lessons I learned fairly young in life, like I don't feel the need to be the smartest person in the room. I do feel the need to contribute.
Right.
And that doesn't mean having the loudest voice or asking the most number of questions, but that means being present, understanding, and then finding something that I can bring to the table. That's very important to me.
Yeah.
I don't like being a passive presence in any room. And now, over a period of time, I don't feel imposter syndrome because I know that I've worked very hard and nothing has come by way of
Luck.
accident or yeah, exactly, or luck, or just, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth or any of that, right? Certainly there has been, tremendous support, and I'm very cognizant that I would not have been in this
Yeah.
position were it not for this fantastic network of people who created steps for me to climb on. But no, if you ask me, do I feel like, oh, what am I doing here? Should I even be here? No, never. Not
So,
anymore.
how did you build this network of people?
With gratitude, which I think a lot of people forget, with being very open about those who've helped me and those who've guided me, and sharing opportunities. Like I have zero problem, and I've done this over and over again. If let's say you come to me with an opportunity and for whatever reason I can't accept it, I will not deny that opportunity to somebody else by not saying another person's name.
I agree.
And that sense of generosity, I think I saw, again, it comes from my parents, where it's always like, this doesn't work for me, but maybe this could work for someone else. Let me actually do the legwork to make that connection, right? And it doesn't come from a place of expecting anything, though, of course, somewhere we all expect that that other person will acknowledge it. That's all. And because I expect that from others, I know that others expect that from me. So if
So you
someone
acknowledge
has,
it.
so I acknowledge it. Like I have zero problem
I
saying,
think the basic courtesies that we learned growing up, if we
yeah,
just do
it's
them
so
right,
basic.
yeah, if we just do
There's
them
no
right.
magic
But that's the
formula.
biggest challenge because you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can trust the other one. So
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't, So there's always
Yeah.
that second guessing people. But I think that if you just focus on yourself
Yeah.
and just do the basics, you're fine. But I want to know why
Yeah.
I'm asking what the network is because, as I said, I grew up in like New Bombay. I went to Father Agnew Multipurpose School. Don't ask me what multipurpose stands for. People often make fun of that. So I didn't have a network of, say, design people who become designers now
Yeah.
or stylists now or
Yeah.
writers now. I didn't have that. So I always say that Instagram helped me so much to build my community, to build my network. So if somebody were to ask me, how do I build my network? I would say Instagram. What was it for you?
It was going out, asking questions, shaking hands, meeting people, saying yes to as many opportunities as I could when I was younger.
Right.
And I think that people are more likely to give you time if they know who you are. If you're an email or if
Right.
you are someone, an Instagram friend, there are so many people who I chat with on Instagram and we've had long conversations. I don't know who they are. So if they meet me in person, I literally will not know, right? But the people who I've met at events and I've kind of developed conversations, and because I'm not crippled by self-doubt when I walk into a room, and because I'm an extrovert, it's easier for me. But this is my advice to everyone, is that you have to find a way to make one-on-one connections with people. And sometimes it's as simple as walking up to someone and say, hey, I really love what you're wearing. That looks so good on you. Like, tell me where you got it from. And of course, hopefully say something genuine. I'm
Yeah.
not saying
Yeah.
say that, but find a way to connect with people. They'll remember you, and they'll be more open to whatever it is that you may need via an energy exchange or any other kind of exchange in the future. So I built my network that way, like old school journalism, pounding the pavement, going to shows, going to people's studios, like at Fashion Week, going to the stalls, shaking hands with people, asking people so many questions that they were just like, who is this annoying person? Okay, I will remember her.
Yeah.
Putting in the time, none of this stuff. I feel like the one big difference that I would say that people have forgotten is that they think that everything happens overnight.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's 17 years of doing this.
Yeah, you started this when you were 19.
Yeah, I started working when I was 19 years old. It's been a long damn
Me too.
time.
I was 19.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Right? And there was no glamour to it. So hopefully you will always have the grace to make it seem effortless, but there is effort. And it's years of effort. And it's years of not just effort, but I would say enthusiasm. Like for me, when I hire people, if I find that the person is not enthusiastic, I'm somehow turned off by it because I'm like,
How do you know if they're enthusiastic or not? This is so important when you're hiring people. Right now, it just can be so deceptive, the whole thing. Like on one day, they're really enthusiastic and then they're not suddenly. So,
I don't know.
do you feel like you do it well? Like, have you been able to pick really good people in the two teams that you've built? Like,
I think I make mistakes all the time, and there are certain bets that have gone dramatically wrong. But over a period of time, I figured out a formula, or at least like not a sixth sense, but like an instinct for the kinds of questions, the kinds of answers. One of the things because at the end of every interview, I will tell people, like, so do you have any questions for me? And if they say no, that's it, they're not getting the job. Like, there's no way. Then I also have been accused of trying to convince people not to join because what I do is I tell them I'm going to be so honest with you about what the job actually entails. And at the end of this, if you still have enthusiasm for it, that's a different question. So I just lay it bare. I'm like, you think that you're joining something very glamorous and you're going to, I don't know, float around in some designer cloud all the time. No, this is what the day-to-day grind of it is. And you have to have stamina. And so most of my team members, after they joined, they said, oh, you were so intimidating in the interview and you didn't smile. And I was like, no, I'm just trying to, if you can make it past that and if you can have enthusiasm for the job and still want to work with someone who you feel is intimidating, because there will be days where I'll have to be that person.
Yeah.
And there will be days where you will meet people who are not kind to you because they have no reason to be kind to you. So if you're expecting that all the time, then, maybe this is not the job for you, because being a journalist is having like the skin of a rhino.
Yeah.
You have to constantly manage people's moods, because what are we? We're just like conduits, right? We're just telling people stories. So if you bring your ego into this, and if you are so easily dejected or extra sensitive, then it's certainly not the place.
Do you still look at yourself as a journalist? Do you call
Always.
yourself? Yeah.
Always. I will never introduce myself as the editor of Vogue. If someone asks me what I do, I say I'm a journalist, and then my friends will go like,
Why? What is the reason? Why not?
because that's what I am. Today I'm the editor of Vogue, but I have been a journalist. I hopefully will be a journalist. And the title of where I work it's lovely, but it doesn't define me.
So what defines you?
My ethics, my experiences, and hopefully what I'm able to leave people with after having an interaction with them. Those are the things that define me. And the job title might change. I mean, tomorrow they might decide that Rochelle's doing a terrible job and let's,
I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Okay, I don't want that possibility cannot exist. Okay, so you have given one of the most, I would say, scariest interviews to the most intimidating and powerful, like Anna Wintour. Okay, like it does not ever, right? She's a myth. She's a legend. So, did you like prep for that? What was your prep for it, or
I mean,
did you just go in?
I try to be prepared, especially if it's a job interview. I try to center myself and analyze. Analyze it from the other person's perspective, like what is it that they're looking for, and what do I need to bring to this job. So I did the same preparation that I would have done for everything. But when I first met her, I didn't know it was for a job interview. I was told again by somebody who said my name in a room that I wasn't present in. I was told that she just wants to meet people from outside of Condé Nast to understand the Indian market. So I went with zero expectations. I was so dumb about it that I even told Twinkle, who was my boss at the time, that, so-and-so has asked me to go and meet Anna, and would you be okay with it? And she was like, yeah, sure. And that's how, like, thick I was, I guess, about what was happening. And I met Anna, and she was so generous and very friendly and open, and we had a lovely conversation. And I realized, as you were talking, and I was very animatedly talking, I looked down and I realized that I had, for reasons best known to myself at that time, had toenails that were painted one blue, one yellow, one blue, one yellow. And then the whole time I was like trying to just keep my legs hidden under my skirt.
But Anna likes color.
Anna likes color, but I don't think Anna likes clowns. And so I certainly looked that day, ankle down, I looked like a clown. Thereafter, I've met her a few times. And what I love about Anna, she's very clear in her communication. She has certain gold standards of quality, and she explains them to you quickly. She is the most efficient human being I know. She wastes no time. She's also one of the most hardworking women I've ever met in my life.
Has to be.
And this part is amazing. She is on the pulse of everything. She knows what's happening. She knows what's sensitive, what's not sensitive. Her worldview keeps adapting. So she is, in that way, I think people find her intimidating, if at all, because she doesn't waste time, because she has no time to waste. She's running a global empire, And she understands the value of time, not just hers, but yours as well. So when you meet her, she's deeply cognizant that, okay, we have 20 minutes. Both of our 20 minutes is equally valuable. Let's make the most of it. And so I've never had an interaction with her where I didn't leave smarter, more clear in my own mind about what needs to happen, and inspired by her work ethic. I deeply admire people with strong work ethics, and she certainly is one of them.
Rochelle, why do you think you got the job?
I honestly don't know. I can tell you about a few things that I may have done right inadvertently. I was myself the entire time. I spoke about the things that mattered to me. I explained that this is not a world I was born into. This is a world I learned and doors opened up, and then I took those responsibilities very seriously. And I think that there were also moments of levity that we had, that Anna and I shared, and a lot of the people who I spoke to. I think that maybe the fact that I wasn't overwhelmed with this process, and I wasn't necessarily trying very hard to present a certain persona, I think that may have contributed. Because I remember in the press release when it went out, Anna said her quote was like a few other things, and then like Rochelle is a really fun person to be around. And I read that as, oh man, like, it's how you say it. She's so sweet.
She's so sweet.
She's so interesting. It's like, you don't know
You
what to
wanted
say.
heavy words,
Yeah,
like big words.
Yeah. But then everyone who read that was like, Anna called you fun? And I was like, oh, wait, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's these things are
an
very carefully.
amazing thing.
These things are very carefully considered. What goes in a press release is like 3 layers of introspection and investigation from across 4 different continents. And so the fact that she said it in retrospect, I feel like, okay, they were looking maybe for someone with personality. They were looking for somebody who was collaborative and someone who was very clear that this is a process. I don't know how to do it. I'm going to learn. I need your support. And all I know is how to adapt very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you give me the right tools, I will do it, and I will do my 200%. So a combination perhaps of all these factors, and having people in the system who know you and vouch for you and kind of champion you.
Yeah.
So I don't think I did this alone at all. I think there were many, many people who conspired in many different ways to make this happen.
And then when it happened, like when you found out that you've got it, like what was your feeling?
I think I have blanked that out because it must have been so overwhelming. I knew about it a long time before anybody else did, so I had to sit on this secret, and I would have people messaging me and calling me, and a lot of friends were like, I hope you've applied for the job, and I would just keep saying, I won't apply for it. If Vogue
Right.
wants, they can reach out, which was true. So I wasn't lying. And then the day that they were going to do the announcement, it was a funny day because I knew that something's going to go down, right?
Oh, really?
And in the sense that I knew that it was a big deal, and I knew that a lot of people were waiting to hear who the person was. And it was going to be announced in India to my team at 7:00. And they had told me that, it was being done in a very ceremonial fashion. So 7:00, I had to get on the Zoom. And I had said, because I wanted to control the message that went out, because all these things matter to me, it's important to be grateful. I didn't want for anybody to say, oh, this is some new era. Or, I wanted to be very cognizant of all the people who had laid the foundation for this brand, right? So I had thought of a message and how I'm going to say it and what I want to say. And so I said, can I please also post it on my Instagram, because it's very important for me to control my own narrative. And they said, okay, you can do it at 7:15 because the meeting is likely to last from 7 to 7:15. I said, okay, I had it ready, uploaded the image, was there, sat on my laptop, was introduced to the team. And then that meeting wrapped up in 8 minutes.
Okay.
So then I was like, oh my God, it's 7:08. And I've only asked permission to go live at 7:15. What do I do? Should I just go live anyway? But I was like, no, there's so many global people involved. And I was like, just sitting there, hoping that nobody who knew would have immediately posted about it or spread the message. And then at 7:15 sharp, I just hit post. And then I wasn't able to get up from where I was sitting for the next 1 hour.
You started getting calls.
My phone just exploded. But can I tell you, the thing that made me the happiest, the first 2 phone calls I got were from 2 designers, page designers, who I had worked with at GQ. And I was a digital editor, so I didn't even work on the print edition, but they used to sit on the table behind me. And the first one, his name is Vivek. He called me, and he called me after like 10 years. We've not spoken in 10 years, okay? And he was so excited. He's like, Rochelle, I just got the news, and I was on a bike. I'm in Chennai. I've just pulled over, and I just called you to say I'm so happy for you. And I was like, wow. Wow, right? Like for this person to be so happy for me in a manner in which I can do nothing for him,
Yeah.
right? There is no exchange of, There's no transaction here. It's just pure happiness. I felt like, okay, I have done something right.
Yeah.
If somebody who has nothing to gain is this happy that he's pulled over on the road and called me and he's the first one to call. And then my phone was just like blowing up, messages coming in, Instagram, everything. And I was just like, what is happening? I mean, I knew it was going to be crazy, but I think when you're in it, you're just like, wow, that's amazing.
And you came in at a very tricky time.
I did, yes.
So did it suddenly hit you that, okay, so from tomorrow, this is my baby to like...
Luckily, I still had time because they made the announcement and then it was still going to be another few weeks before I joined. So I had 2 babies. I had Tweak, which is very dear to me, continues to be very dear to me. I'm deeply invested in its success and I, have wonderful relationships with the entire team, with the current editor, who's a very dear friend of mine, Mamta, and with Twinkle herself. So I had 2 babies suddenly and I was like, I'm not the maternal type, what's going on? But I was like somehow managing it. In many ways, I think that being thrown in the deep end works because you don't have time to overthink anything. You just have to work. And I'm so grateful for I thought the hardest thing to do would be to convince the team to trust me. Because of course you're a new editor, why should they believe that you know what you're doing? But this team really from day one, they were like rolling up their sleeves. They were like, let's go. What do you want to do? Let's make it happen.
Wow, okay.
So what I thought would be the hardest part of the job actually turned out to be the easiest part of the job. And in our first 30 days, we had to pull off an event, Forces of Fashion, which we
and it was
attended.
really well done. Like
Thank
the
you.
turnout was insane.
Thank you. It was, we killed ourselves trying to do that. But I was very clear that if we do something, it has to be done with, I kept telling my team, we have to make people feel special. Like whoever it is, there's not going to be any hierarchy. Even in our selection of designers and names, we wanted to make sure that it was across the board, people from different parts of the country, people who very often get sidelined because they don't have powerful enough PR people or they're working out of a different city and they're not in the Bombay, Delhi cabal. And I picked up the phone and called almost everyone, or at least messaged everybody I could, and used a lot of emotional blackmail to get some people out of their cozy homes, and they did not want to leave. Like Savio John, I was like, Savio, I'm going. You have to do this for me. And when he came, people were so stunned to see Savio John that he came to me later and said, thank you for convincing me to come, because I really felt special. And I was like, that is all I want. I want for people, when they engage with Vogue, to feel special. And we will obviously fail in trying to do this each time. But if we can do it 90% of the time, or at least attempt, that's all. And we also had to bring out the first edition. It's like, it's an impossible thing, because no matter what you do, you're going to not have done it the way you wanted to do it. But what I try to do is like, this is more about, it's not about the cover, because a lot of people get fixated on that. It's not about the celebrity. It is about the theme, and it is about the spirit. What are we doing? For me, 2024 is really like the overarching theme of this year is sisterhood. It's about women uplifting other women, women creating opportunities and space for other women. And that's what we wanted to focus on. And I told my team it's going to be a slow burn. 90% of people are not going to get it. Enough people will say like, what is this? This is not Vogue. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, we just have to do it with our whole heart.
But that's not what's happened.
It's a slow burn, and it's taken time, but people are slowly beginning to get it. It's like, okay, there's a soul here, right?
Yeah.
And that soul was always there. We just have to find a way to express ourselves, not through trends and not through superficialities, but through like something deeper, something that connects us. And we're trying, and hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, but I mean, I often wonder, like, you have Condé Nast's legacy, you have Vogue's legacy, and then you have Vogue India's legacy. And then there is Rochelle, and there's Rochelle's own voice and her years of having her voice and her... I know that at Tweak India also you had to kind of, represent Tweak India. But how do you do that here now? Like, how much of Rochelle's voice can still remain Rochelle's voice, and how much of Vogue and Condé Nast kind of have... do you enjoy freedom like you used to?
Oh my gosh. I enjoy freedom. I,
Do you get the freedom that you used to enjoy?
I do. I think that, creativity is at its best when you have to operate within certain confines.
I agree. Limitations,
Yeah.
yeah.
The minute you give me carte blanche, I will be crippled by that. It's like, where do I go? I need direction, right? Like
Absolutely,
most
yeah.
creative people. I would say that Vogue has always upheld the values of journalism because, again, the person at the helm, Anna, she comes from a family of journalists, right? So quality, the editorial voice, making sure that you have a strong point of view, making sure that you have something unique to say. Like I tell my team, like we're not here to pollute the universe. We don't need to add more. There's enough. So if we don't have an interesting thing to say, if we don't have a Vogue perspective, then we should not say it. It's okay. Let someone else get those page views, right? So I don't feel stifled at all. I feel like maybe the topics are slightly different from what I was covering at Tweak would be slightly different from what I'm covering at Vogue. But my voice is, again, it's so deeply ingrained in me that I don't think I even know how to divorce it. And thankfully, no one has yet asked me to tone it down. But also, there has been a journey. Like the way I used to write and the way I write now, I would like to believe is the most sophisticated version. I would like to believe there's been
But there's still Dolo
some.
650.
There's still Dolo 650. You can't take that away from me. I
Yeah.
still, my style is very visual. So I like to, when the reader is reading anything, I want them to be immersed in a world. I want that world to become very immediately apparent to them.
Yeah.
And to find a way to speak to them through a cultural lens, which is very important. So that is something that I'm hoping that I'll be able to bring to Vogue India that will make it slightly different from maybe another kind of Vogue. But it is a work in progress. And every day we learn, and every day we fail, and every day we pivot, and we'll get to where we need to be.
You know how fashion is often more like it is always, I think, looked at as being frivolous, you know. There was a long time where coming out of COVID, even I kind of felt like, oh my God, it's so frivolous. What am I doing? I'm just making bag shoes. And like, how many clothes can I really make, you know? It was a journey for me to come back to like loving it. So fashion is seen as something that's frivolous, but writing, or when you say you're a writer or you're a journalist, that's seen as being very intellectual. It has a lot of respect. It's very deep. So how do you look at that marriage now? Like how do you view fashion journalism?
Look, I think the rules of journalism, no matter, hopefully, no matter what you're writing about, whether that's politics or whether that's like international policy or wars, it's the same. It's those rules don't change. I think the idea that fashion is frivolous has often been used as a tool to control and to demean and often targeted at women because
Yes.
fashion is seen as the mainstay for women. So why is it that video games are totally intellectual and fun and XYZ?
Imaginative and cool and like
Exactly,
creative.
exactly
Yeah.
creative, but fashion isn't. So these kinds of when people throw these sort of these barbs at me, I realize that it says a lot more about them than it says about me because fashion is it's so layered, right? At the very baseline, fashion is craft, and fashion is history, and fashion can tell you so much about the politics of the time, and it also is freedom. Fashion is also, in many ways, one of the most inclusive places that anyone can find themselves in because before any other sort of industry accepted, and I'm not counting the art world because I wouldn't call it an industry yet, but before any other industry accepted people of the LGBTQIA community, or before they accepted the idea of like gender being fluid, or where women were powerful and women were given were at the very front of decision making, it was fashion, it was everywhere. So people only realize much later that a lot of these social and cultural movements started in the fashion space. And some of it is also our fault because we like to over decorate and we like to create language that can be exclusive to people. But I'm so grateful for this industry because I believe what we do is we create beautiful things and we give people joy. And you can see it, right? You can see when somebody buys something that makes them and wears something that makes them feel comfortable in their own skin and feel powerful, you can see how it changes the way they present themselves to the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
And
agree.
how can you do that? How can any other profession do that on a daily basis?
Yeah.
That's what we do on a
Yeah.
daily basis. We give people, and not me, like I'm just the documentarian hanging on the end of the fashion spectrum. But I have so much respect for designers and craftsmen and, you know, creative directors and photographers, because I see like what joy is there in living if it was not for the beauty around us. And
Beautiful.
fashion brings beauty into this world. So
And also, I was speaking with Alok Menon. They were visiting, and I was like, I'm finding it hard to like love my work, and it's paining me now. Like, is it frivolous? Is it like silly what I'm doing? And they were like, all this while, all acts of rebellion that we've seen that have led to, say, anything that has always been a very masculine rebellion, right? Which often leads to war.
yes.
Okay, and so much destruction and so many lives lost. But if you look at feminism, or if you look at the the queer community, and the way they are making governments change their laws, they're doing it through fashion, they're doing it through art, and that is the feminine language of rebellion and revolution. And it creates nothing but beauty. Okay, you don't see any wars, you don't see any death, you don't see none of that happening, and yet you want to call it frivolous. It's silly, exactly what you're saying. We're actually like feeding the patriarchy when we're saying that.
It's
Yeah.
totally a tool of dismissal and a tool to make people feel bad about themselves, because the ones who care about it are most likely to be women or most likely to be members of the queer community.
Yeah.
And it's not that men today don't care about fashion, or not that they ever, did care about fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the word dandy comes from a very old part of history where men cared deeply about the way they presented themselves.
Yeah.
At some point, as all things do, they become tools of oppression. I have found nothing but joy and lightness in fashion, which is not to say that fashion cannot be destructive in ways by contributing to the excess that we
Consumerism,
create.
yeah.
Exactly. It's not to say that, but I think it's again so nuanced that calling it frivolous just shows how limited the other person's thinking is. The person who's calling it frivolous, and not necessarily us who are in fashion and who care very deeply about the people that we work with. And
Right.
you, I mean, look at this environment you're creating and look at what you're putting out into the world. I mean, you're changing so many lives every day.
Yeah, thank you. That helps. There is another really strong force in India, which is Bollywood, that kind of really controls how we put out our content or what people consume and how much of, like, I know that there's in a collection that I made of, say, 40 pieces, there's one piece that gets worn by Alia Bhatt, and then that's the only lehenga that will sell. And no matter what I call it, people will call it, do you have the Alia Bhatt lehenga?
Yes.
And that is the beauty and the power of Bollywood. But I oftentimes feel like if brands, younger brands, a lot of young designers are not able to have that kind of reach, are not able to access Bollywood that way. I think that it is quite a barrier in that sense. So does that also kind of limit you in how you create content that will get consumed by a country that is so in awe of Bollywood?
So Bollywood is like the tide, right? No matter whether we like the tide or not, the tide exists, and the tide it exerts a very powerful force on this world. Maybe it's because I'm from Goa, I'm using this bizarre analogy, but I could either swim against the tide or I could swim with the tide, and I could figure out a way to make the tide work for me, right? I think that actors, whether they're whatever film industry they're from, can be powerful ambassadors for your brand. And of course, you might get a sharp jump in attention if somebody wears something that's yours. But I don't think it's sustainable unless the brand is actually qualitative, right? And over a period of time, there are many brands who don't engage necessarily with actors on a very heavy scale, but are doing good business. It really does come down to what is your goal for your brand? Is your goal to be famous? And sure, with fame comes definitely a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
For me, putting a celebrity on the cover is literally a way to get people to read everything else that we're trying to do.
Right.
So when people have these conversations about the cover and the Vogue covers this and the Vogue covers that, to me it's like looking at a window and judging the house. It's like, okay, that's fine. Like 20 people will judge the cover. 3 people might be interested to see what's inside the magazine. And those are the 3 people that I'm interested in having a deeper
Right.
conversation with. Because we can't constantly chase external validation. It's so there's no loyalty there, right? Like you said, like the people won't know what the dress is. They may not even know the name of the brand. They'll just
Yeah.
like click the handle. You
Yeah.
got tagged in an
Yeah.
Instagram post, they'll click the handle and then they'll be like Alia Bhatt. And tomorrow they won't remember.
Yeah.
But I think that what your brand is a fantastic example of having a very powerful visual language and having a certain quality that people love and having an ethos that whether it's Alia Bhatt wearing it or it's whoever, like Tripti Dimri wearing it or it's like Shah Rukh Khan wearing it, right? It'll never be that the brand has adapted to them. It'll always be them adapting to the brand. And that's what we're trying to do at Vogue as well. Like, I can recognize a Papa Don't Preach garment, doesn't matter who is wearing it. And sometimes I don't even notice who's wearing it because many of them also have started to style themselves very similarly, right? I'll notice the garment. And that is what I would love for Vogue to be, where people read, because that's what I built at Tweak.
Yeah, you did.
At Tweak, we knew that people could recognize a Tweak caption, they could recognize a Tweak story. They just knew
Yeah,
because of
very
our
much.
style. And I'm hoping to try and bring that into Vogue as well, where people read it and they know that this is a Vogue story. So Bollywood can be a tremendous tool. It can also be limiting, definitely. I think it's very frustrating for a lot of designers, as you said, if they don't get that.
Or even as writers or as
Yeah.
journalists, like, is it
It is
limiting?
frustrating, but now what are we going to do? Sit in our rooms and constantly complain about it, or find ways to work
Yeah.
within that construct and take something that can be heavy and can be limiting and make it work for you? Like, I just don't see the sense in complaining about it because we also feed the system, right?
I agree.
So
I
what's
will
the
also
point?
click on the lehenga.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
Well,
also like deeply involved in some random
yeah, what
celebrities.
lipstick is she wearing today? I want to know.
I go down these rabbit holes of people's personal lives and I genuinely don't care. But there's just something, there's some sort of escapism of like, oh, why did this person disappear from public view? Let me read all the
Yeah.
conspiracy
Oh, I
theories.
have the divorced. Like, what happened there?
I genuinely don't actually care.
Yeah.
But it's just an escape story. So I don't want to judge anybody else for why their obsession with Bollywood. I would just really love to create content that's meaningful. And that's what we're trying to do. Like, even with, for example, our cover shoots, we make very elaborate mood boards and very elaborate pitches. It's not just come here, we'll put you in 3 designer clothes, we'll shoot you in, blow-dried hair and the same red carpet glam. Like, we try and build a world. And we try and take them outside of their comfort zone and do something collaboratively.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we are trying to create a moment that people will remember. Because that is what Vogue actually has been famous for doing.
Yes,
right?
historically, yeah.
Historically, that's what Vogue does. In India also, like, my deepest sadness is that Prabhudo is not around
Wow.
when I'm in this position. Because like, I would have loved nothing more
What
than to have been
beauty,
able to
yeah.
shoot with him. That jewelry shoot that he did with Anaita.
Anaita.
Oh my gosh! Like, till today,
Stunning.
every image is it's burnt into
Same
my
here. So
brain.
many of my mood boards had that.
All
you know?
mood boards still
Yeah,
have it, and
yeah.
it looks perfectly relevant today. You
Yeah.
could never be able to tell that image is 17 years old. That's what we're trying to create,
Yeah.
right? There's not a single Bollywood celebrity in that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful images that have transcended time. And I think that when people complain about, oh, it's like you're getting lost in the minutia. You're getting lost in the weeds. You have to pull yourself out of that and you have to keep going and remember what your ethos is and remember what your creative vision is. And somehow, if you stick to that, and hopefully you're good, let's start with that. You have to be good to begin with. You
Yeah.
know? Not everyone is going to have success because honestly, not everyone is cut out to do this. There's that whole thing of you can be whatever you want. No, you actually cannot. Today, I
Yeah, you
cannot be
believe
an
that?
NBA player if I want to be. But I can be the best editor that I can possibly be. So somewhere that reality check is also important, I feel. Not enough parents tell their kids that, no, actually, you can't be anything you want to be, but maybe you'll be really good at this.
Right.
And pursue that. I don't see it as I've gone around the world and then come back. But to your question, I don't perceive it as limiting. I think it's one of the many tools we're given.
Right.
Telling you earlier, right, when we were doing our hair and makeup, like tomorrow, if a meteor struck and all the lifestyle journalists and all the hedge fund managers disappeared,
Yeah.
the world would go on. So
You're kind to not say fashion designers.
no,
If fashion designers disappeared, the world would be fine.
they would have fewer options to wear,
Yeah.
but they would definitely be fine. So the thing is that when you understand that your job is not vital to the existence of humanity,
Wow.
you don't get stuck with the mundane problems. You know, you're like, okay, today was a hard day, but tomorrow is going to be great. And that thing I'm planning and that idea, how many jobs, Shubhika, tell me, do we get where you can have an idea and then within a week you'll see that idea come to fruition? How many jobs have that? How many jobs can you just think of something in your sleep, wake up, and a month later it is tangible?
Yeah.
Right?
You get to do that, yeah.
How much adrenaline does that give you
Yeah.
on a daily basis?
I agree.
That is what feeds me. I'm like, I have an idea. I don't have to, just write it down in a notebook, forget about it, and then 20 years later be like, oh shit, I wish I could have, I
You
can
get to
do
do it,
that.
yeah.
So I still feel the same.
So that is
hunger.
what inspires you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried in the past decade not to put myself in positions where I'm not excited to go to work every day. And maybe it's just the big nerd in me, but I enjoy it. Like even my partner is like, your days are too hectic. Because if I have a day where it's just like back to back to back to back things,
You
and
love
I've
it.
met multiple people and I'm so tired at the end, but I have so many stories to tell, and I met this person and this person said this, and oh, it's like, he calls me born caffeinated because I can't drink caffeine. My brain will absolutely shatter and be, spray painted across these walls. But I deeply enjoy what I do, and being with people gives me energy, by the way. I'm one of those people where I'm energized by
Yeah.
being in social situations. So that is journalism at its core.
And by adding value.
And by adding value.
And
yeah.
I, you were sitting for hair and makeup. It was just like 5 minutes in, and you were like, "Okay, so you guys are doing these stories on the karigars. Can I help? Is there anything I can do to help?" So I feel like that what you said about yourself is so true.
Thank you.
That you want to add value in whichever room or group of people that you're in, and I think that is something that'll always give you energy. When the elders used to say, only if you give, you get.
Yeah,
And we'd be like, okay,
completely.
come on, yeah, just stop saying that. But my
So
mom will always,
annoying.
if I'm really low, right, and I'm moping in my house, my mom is like, it's because you stopped giving. And I'm
that's
so
so
mad at
beautiful.
her. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just tired and I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And she's like, when you give, you see me, and I see my mom, okay? And she's been diagnosed with like a really like serious health condition, but
gosh.
she's on her feet. She has more energy. She goes to like old age homes, anath ashrams, and
Love
she
it.
gives talks in like dhule and things like that. She has more energy than me because she's giving.
Yeah.
There's zero transaction.
Correct.
And I feel wherever transaction is involved, like if sitting there, you were like, okay, let me see if I can do something for you guys in return. Like, let's figure out what we can do, like a barter situation.
Yeah.
The energy kind of ends there.
100%.
Yeah. So I think that's why you are this caffeinated.
Yeah. Very annoying person who
yeah.
always has energy.
No, I love that. I think that's so
you.
inspiring. I needed this shot of caffeine, just sitting and having this conversation with you because I've been having a hard time at work getting inspired.
Really?
So I think this was my shot of caffeine. So Rochelle, it's a very interesting time right now to be in India simply because of the fact that all eyes seem to be on India. And now suddenly with Dior doing their show in front of Gateway of India, and then people are like, okay, so Indian craftsmanship is actually luxury. It's something that we've always known. But we kind of needed that validation from the West, it seems. And I know that your intention also at Vogue, which I saw you like beautifully do with the panel that you did with Anita Dongre and others, where you really were keen on highlighting what Indian luxury actually means. So how do you now see the future of Indian luxury?
I think there's a responsibility on the part of both the consumer and the designers or the powers that be within the luxury space to make sure that the benefits that accrue are equitably distributed, which means that we will lose our advantage in the luxury market if we are not able to empower our karigars to remain in that family legacy, right? By making sure that their lives are enjoyable and that they have the facilities to send their kids for higher education if they want to, and to live comfortable lives. So I think that the first thing for me, very, very importantly, is to kind of bring that equity into the game. And it's not just the designers at the very top of the pyramid or the CEOs who get to make decisions, right? So that awareness is something that we're trying to build at Vogue. That education is something I'm trying to equip myself with constantly. Through that equity comes stability. Through stability comes a certain corporatization that at least helps this grow in a manner that's hopefully sustainable and hopefully, where it grows in a way that it can actually become a full-fledged industry. And this I mean for the homegrown luxury space. Because we're losing age-old crafts every day. Because I was at a award ceremony recently, and they were awarding certain craftsmen, and they were like, he is the last man who practices this craft.
Yeah.
His children don't want to, his family has done it. And this is the last family that will have this. And I'm like, how are we allowing these things to just disappear right in front of our eyes so easily? And what we can do, at least at Vogue, is sort of create that education, encourage people to engage with it, work with designers to find ways in which we can help them reach that audience and explain their craft and make it accessible. So for me, luxury, if designers are able to offer accessible versions where again you kind of tease people with a little like appetizer and then they get to the main course, that is the positive direction for the industry in general. With regards to foreign brands coming in, I think what's really interesting to see now is I love to have these conversations with brands is where are your buyers really sitting? And it's so cool to see the names of the places that they'll mention, and they'll be like, oh, Siliguri or like Meghalaya or, Bangalore. And it's not the Bombay, Delhi again strongholds. So I think what's fascinating is seeing these different parts of India where now there's a lot of money, there's a lot of interest, there's a deep appetite, and there's also a cultural revolution, hopefully, brewing in these places where there are more creatives there are more people with means and therefore wanting to. I mean, it's true for Goa also now. Like, there's a lot of the vibe in Goa is changing, the culture in Goa is changing. So for me, the future of luxury is hopefully democratic. That's what I would like to see.
Right. Wow.
Thank you.
How do you define luxury? Like, because people often ask me, why is there no luxury brand that has been born out of India yet? And my question to that is that because the consumers haven't really supported any kind of brand to be that. Even in India, there is still the consumer will spend at an LV and a Burberry first in the name of luxury at that price point, over spending it on an Indian designer, except when it comes to weddings. Okay, but not for their everyday wear or the office wear or just their bags or their shoes. That's why you don't see so many like great shoe designers coming out of here. We have such amazing karigars and craftsmen who make shoes.
Yeah.
We make it for the best brands in the world, but you hardly see anybody making shoes in India. Any design house making shoes in India.
Right.
Why is that?
I mean, I don't know the complete answer. I can just give you my perspective on it. I think that first of all, when people say no luxury brand, I don't know what that means because we have tons of luxury brands, right? But
Global, at a global level.
Yeah, maybe what they're talking about is at a global level. And I think what Indian designers haven't spent a lot of time doing is marketing themselves, pouring buckets and buckets of money into creating the myth behind the brand that a lot of other international brands do. And they've obviously had a head start.
Yeah, 200 years, 300 years, yeah.
The industry here is nascent, it's relatively unorganized, it's kind of, homegrown in a way that a lot of designers have started with literally putting the money from their own pockets.
Yeah,
They're not being...
all of us, yeah.
So I think it's going to take time, and you're absolutely right. Like, the responsibility is also on us, on the consumer, to support the Indian brands. And I tell my friends this, and I try to say this every opportunity I get. Like, you're going into a Zara and you're buying something that, honestly, today Zara is as expensive as your starting level Indian designers.
Yes.
Like, you go into a Zara, the dress is 8,000. Why don't you spend 2,000 rupees more and support an Indian designer who's working with a craft cluster, who's going to give you amazing fabric and who's going to actually give you quality? And it won't be one of 17,000 that you can get all around the world. It'll be one of 20 or one of 200, right?
Yeah.
I think it's both. It's the designers being able to tell a narrative, and that's where brands like Condé Nast and that's where Vogue is really able to help build that narrative with designers and present them at a certain level, which frankly is necessary if you want to compete at that level. And not every designer does. Some designers are like, I'm very happy with doing this, and this is all I want to do. I don't want to get hungry. I don't want to turn into a corporate. I don't want to become an employee of somebody who's then going to tell me how to run my business. Because let's face it, that's the truth of what it is internationally, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have creative directors, but they are in many ways given a template that they
Yeah.
have to replicate. And that template is driven by sales, and that template is driven by data. So many Indian designers chafe under that kind of pressure, or they don't want to be that. They want full control. So I think it's a process. They've obviously had a head start many, many hundreds of years before us, and that
The comparison isn't fair.
the comparison isn't fair. It's unnecessary. It's
Yeah.
like, why are we constantly comparing, right? If you really believe in a designer and you want to support them and you believe in Indian designs, I think definitely there is also a responsibility on the Indian designer to understand the customer better. And I think that they don't do enough
Yeah.
of that, like R&D, what is the market like, what is required. Many of them still like operate in a kind of
Mom and pop.
yeah,
shop way.
and a creative silo, right? This is what I want to create. But yeah, what is your consumer actually interested in? So there is a symbiotic relationship that
Right.
needs to grow.
Yeah. That's very well said. Yeah.
Thank you. And a certain amount of marketing that is required, and hopefully Vogue can assist in that and
Go Vogue.
in helping build this industry.
Yeah.
Like, it has to go hand in hand. But luxury for me is something that was made for me, right? And something that I know is not replicable. And that India does possibly
And was made
better.
locally.
Yeah, it was made locally.
By hands from that country.
It makes me so
that you-
happy,
yeah.
honestly. Like, taking me into any of these studios is like, it's a liability, because I will definitely tear up. I will definitely sit and talk to someone and they will tell me how they've been doing this for 20 years, and I will
Yeah.
definitely get super emo and lame about it. But these are the things that I find the most special parts of this job. Yeah.
We're coming to the end of this amazing conversation. I honestly, sincerely don't want it to end.
Thank
I
you.
have so many questions because I just want to know how the dots got connected from when you were really little to where you are now.
Okay.
And a lot of those dots still need connection for me, but I hopefully that
Round
means
two.
that there will be a round two.
Yeah.
For now, hashtag preach. Actually, the tagline is once upon a disruption. And I just believe that every industry after a point needs a disruption. And I know we've had too many of those in the recent past. But what do you think your industry needs? What kind of a disruption do you think it needs?
I think it's going through one right now with the rise of AI and people questioning themselves about, what is the human intervention that will be necessary once AI comes in. So my industry is, first of all, constantly getting disrupted, and the pool is becoming smaller and smaller. I think that what we need to remember in this world of constantly chasing is that we are not monoliths and we are not algorithms, we're humans. And we need, if anything, the disruption has to move towards deeper connections as opposed to towards making people mass that is indiscernible. It's like
Homogeneous.
yeah, that homogeneity and clubbing people in various labels and in ways that completely robs them of their individuality is something that I would like to see disrupted, and hopefully I'm able to do that in some ways at Vogue by introducing stories that people would not expect to see in a Vogue. For me, that is the disruption, is like constantly pushing back against preconceived notions of what we should be and finding deeper connections and looking at people beyond the data.
Okay. Wonderful. So this is just a very quick, like rapid fire kind of a thing. You simply have to say in vogue or out of vogue,
Okay.
or it should be in vogue. Okay.
Cool.
Bleached eyebrows. I don't know when they were in vogue, but okay.
I love them in Vogue. Yeah. I mean, if you have the guts to pull off bleached eyebrows, like, salute.
Okay. Innerwear as outerwear.
Out of Vogue.
Mini bags.
Out of Vogue. Totally pointless.
We need to stop making those. Okay. Crocs.
I have to say in Vogue. Oh my gosh.
Corsets.
Discomfort. Out of Vogue.
Sheer clothing.
In Vogue.
Barbie core.
Out of Vogue now.
Mumbai as the next fashion capital for a fashion week.
Yeah, should be.
AI fashion week with garments made by AI.
No, out of Vogue.
More brand events.
Oh, this is an impossible question, so I'll just smile.
Okay. Clothes that could change as per your mood.
Oh, interesting. But that might let people know what I'm thinking, right? I could be pretending to be in a certain way.
I'm sure we can find some loopholes in this also.
I mean, I think it would be fascinating. Clothes that have technology, I'm always down for.
Yeah. India is equal to Bollywood.
No. Out of Vogue.
Nothing.
No.
Right. Influencer culture. Okay. Want to smile?
Smile.
Okay, done. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was amazing. And I want round 2, 3, 4.
Let's do
and I
it.
know that you're a really busy person, but I'm gonna hound you and I'm gonna make it happen. But this was amazing. And I know that a lot of people will have so many more questions of how the hell did you do it? And all the best to you for all the disruptions that are soon to come.
Thank you.
It's already begun, and I can feel that. And I'm excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It really, really means a lot to me that you guys invited me to be here and that we could have this conversation. I really enjoyed myself. Thanks,
Aashna. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, folks. And the dog that did not give up. If you've ever been called a misfit, a rebel, a disruptor, and stories of other nonconformists like you inspire you, then like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear more extraordinary stories like this one.